So I didn't do a long form video this week because I didn't get around to it. So I thought I'd make up another Q&A. Again, sort of building off the one from Monday or Tuesday about strength cycles for uh, bodybuilders because I mentioned mechanical tension and I want to talk about that a little bit again. So here's the question.
You've said that adding weight to the bar is what stimulates muscle growth, but others say that gaining muscle is what allows you to add weight to the bar. Thoughts?
So for, I don't know, 30 years, uh, I've been pointing out that the primary stimulus of growth, and I explained this the last Q&A, is progressive tension overload, by which I mean adding weight to the bar. Now, there's a whole bunch of caveats because people always misinterpret this. I'm assuming that form stays the same. I'm assuming that all that stays the same, right? I'm not saying add weight to the bar and let your range of motion and technique change, right? What we're interested in is the mechanical tension within the muscle, but we can't measure that right now. What we can use as a proxy is weight on the bar. You also can't compare exercises.
So 30 pounds in a lateral raise, which has a very long lever arm, might actually produce more mechanical tension in the deltoid than a heavier, in terms of what's on the bar, overhead press where the elbow is bent more. What we care about is the mechanical tension in the target muscle. Weight on the bar is merely an indirect indicator of that because that's all we've got.
Right? We were talking about the same exercise, the same person, the same technique. We're adding weight to the bar is what I claim is the stimulus to muscle growth.
We make another caveat. We need to distinguish between short-term stimulators of growth and what's going on in the long term. Right? In the short term, looking at an individual workout, you have to generate a sufficient number of high mechanical tension muscular contractions, which is then sensed through what are called mechanotransducers via the integrins like TIT and a bunch of others, which goes to focal adhesion kinase and activates an enzyme. And this is how mechanical tension is translated into a biological effect. That is the short-term driver on hypertrophy, and this works predominantly through mTOR, the mammalian target of rapamycin, and there's AKT and JAK2 and all this other shit. But ultimately, within a workout, it is a sufficient number, and we don't know how many, of high mechanical tension contractions is what turns on growth. But what about over the long term? Because over the long term, we have to maintain a sufficient degree of mechanical tension. And what that requires is progressive tension overload, adding weight to the bar. So let me make it again clear. I'm talking about over the long term. I don't mean every workout. I don't mean every week. I don't mean, there's no time frame over which this occurs. It occurs more quickly in beginners, although a lot of that is neural gains. It occurs less frequently in intermediates, where the same weight will still be a stimulus load. And in advanced people, it may take months. I've said again, in my elite female powerlifter, it may take me 13 weeks to get her a small PR on her previous lifts. So regardless of that, the increase in the progressive tension overload, the adding weight to the bar, happens when you are ready for it. And we can determine that by changes in bar speed. Reps in reserve, I'm not talking about that, or this will be a long form video. I want to address the question. And that's my basic argument here, that you have to apply progressive tension overload by adding weight to the bar over time to maintain growth. And I still fail to see how this is even a debatable point. With 3 exceptions I'm aware of, every single research study in the history of ever mentions in the methods that they add weight over time to keep the lifters in the proper intensity. Every single one of them, again, except those 3 that I'm currently aware of. If you look at all time-tested hypertrophy programs, especially the ones that work in naturals, my generic bulking routine, hypertrophy-specific training by Brian Haycock that many of you probably are not even aware of, dog crap training by Dante Trudell, FST7, and I forget who that one's by, and I know none of you know what the fuck that is. Scott Stevenson's fortitude training. All of them that work in natural focus on adding weight to the bar over time. Now, each system takes a slightly different approach to this. Right, in my GBR, I tell people to add weight when they can get the final set with more than 2 reps in reserve. In hypertrophy-specific training, the goal is to hit a small PR every 2 weeks and a PR in each repetition range over the length of the cycle, which is about 12 weeks. In dog crap training, the goal is to, as he puts it, beat the record book. When he came up in the 2000s, everybody was still doing the same squeeze pump bullshit. And regardless of everything else, he got them again. Beat the logbook. Every workout, whether they could or not, the goal was to either add more weight or do more repetitions, which in the short term can be a method of progressive overload, but that's a different question. The goal was to get stronger in a moderate repetition range. And FST7 did it however it did it, and Fortitude training, I don't remember enough about the details. The specifics don't matter. The point is that all effective training programs, they aren't based on just escalating drug doses, focus on adding weight to the bar over time. Because that progressive mechanical tension overload is what stimulates growth in the long term. How this is still debatable in 2024 is absolutely beyond me. And yet here we are. That brings us back to it. Like I said, I've been saying that since the earliest part of my career. Again, I'd point out, a natural bodybuilder is not stronger over the long term. They're not bigger. And if you look at most big natural bodybuilders, whether or not they were elite powerlifter strong, they have gotten stronger over their career in a moderate repetition range. And I'm making all these caveats because people invariably fuck it up and misunderstand me. I'm not talking about low rep strength where changes in technique and neural factors discussed last time can play a role. We are talking about making strength gains in a moderate repetition range. That's what stimulates growth. Okay, so back to the original question. I contend that adding weight to the bar is what stimulates muscle growth. Others, I suspect, just to be like, "Ooh, fuck Lyle, he's wrong," because they don't like what I have to say, or no, it's the increase in muscle mass that allows you to add weight to the bar, because a larger muscle is potentially a stronger one. Well, which is it? Well, let me answer the question by asking the question. Where does the circle start? And that'll make sense if you look at this image. Stand in awe of my amazing drawing skills. But this is what I'm talking about. Adding weight is eventually the stimulus in the long term to grow bigger. And then as the muscle grows bigger and you're stronger, which means that the same absolute weight is now less of a stimulus, you are able to add weight, which over time is what stimulates more muscle growth, which is again what allows you to add more weight to the bar. Where does a circle start? And the answer is that it doesn't. This is a loop. But the question then becomes, which is like I said, where's the start? If we're on a loop, what do we say is actually allowing the next part of the circle to occur? And this is the loop that is defining what's going on. But I will still argue that it is the adding weight to the bar that is the key factor to maintaining growth in the long term. Let me explain why that's the case with another image. So again, seems pretty self-explanatory. So you add weight. Over time, you get bigger. But what happens if you now spin off the circle? You stop adding weight to the bar. Well, you quit growing. And I'm not talking about in the immediate term. This is over the long term, right? This is why, like, there's been a few studies. There was one that was like, oh, instead of adding weight to the bar, we did this. Or Brad's got a study that I'm still waiting to see the raw data that, well, instead of adding weight to the bar, we added reps over some 8-week time period. Growth is long term, and over short periods of time, the same training load may very well be a stimulus. I'm not saying, again, that you must add weight every workout, every week, even every month. But if you're not adding weight over the long term, if you are benching the same 185 by 8 now as you were benching 185 the last year, you are no bigger. It does not matter what the fuck else you do. It doesn't matter if you do 45 sets per workout or 26 sets twice a week or fucking lengthen partials. If you are not stronger in that moderate repetition range a year from now, you're not bigger. The end. Because, again, wherever the circle starts, if adding weight to the bar stimulates growth or growing muscle is what allows you to add weight to the bar. If after you've made that size adaptation, you stop adding weight, you stop growing. So I ask you, what is the primary factor here? I mean, fine, I suppose someone will counter-argue, well, if you add weight to the bar and don't grow, then that's more important. But you do. Over time, if you add weight to the bar after the previous adaptation, you'll eventually get some growth. And bottom line, if you don't continue to add weight over some time period, you will stop growing. Period. Even if
Growing larger muscle is what allows you to add weight to the bar. If you don't add weight to the bar, you stop growing. Ergo, adding weight to the bar over the long term is more important. In fact, it is the primary thing that is important, because if you don't add weight to the bar, you will not keep growing. And this is true regardless of anything else you do, with one exception. And that's start taking drugs, which will make you grow no matter what the fuck you do in the gym. Last time, because I know people seem to mishear this. Again, I'm talking about the long term, weeks, months, years, not workout to workout, because you don't grow enough muscle workout to workout to make a difference. Even as a beginner, the rate of muscle protein synthesis is pathetically slow. As you gain muscle, and the same absolute weight on the bar is no longer sufficient to stimulate hypertrophy, you quit growing. So that's my answer to that, is that the counter argument is there is truth to it, because it's a circle, it's a loop of adaptations, but only a change in one of them, that is weight on the bar, is what will keep you growing in the long term. There you go.